If you buy land in the wrong state right now, you're likely locking in at least a decade of underperformance. But these three states, they're quietly positioned to outperform every other state by 2035. You're looking for land that actually holds value, that performs over time, and doesn't kill you with holding costs. You're not just buying acres, you're buying leverage, you're buying privacy, and you're buying tax protection. But if you get it wrong now, you're going to be paying for it for the next 10 years. This is not a TikTok headline list. I'm not even on TikTok. This is a deep dive. This is a deep dive for people like yourself that are looking for an investment that's going to return year after year. Here's what likely matters to you. First of all, where can you get land that will appreciate without overspending up front? Where are the property taxes and carrying costs that are not going to erode your ROI? And one of the most important things for you, where can you still build, rent, subdivide, do things like that without begging some local municipality for permission for it? And a little bit of a precursor here, the states we're covering, they check those boxes in the ways that Texas and Arizona used to. Yeah, that's right. Texas and Arizona are not on this list. So let's jump into it. What are three of the most overlooked but powerful land options for you for the next 10 years? So number 3 on the list, starting things off, Arkansas. Arkansas is a quiet little underdog. People aren't talking about it, but they really should be. I mean, heck, when Walmart makes you their world headquarters and they require companies that they do business with to also open up headquarters in Arkansas, that's a pretty strong thing to start with. Arkansas is quite possible what Texas used to be like around 2000. First of all, the land's pretty darn cheap. There's not a lot of zoning oversight, so you're not going to have to deal with a lot of zoning rules and stuff like that. And the demand's already there. It's just out in plain sight at this point. So in terms of the data in Arkansas, first of all, you can still find rural lake parcels for $10,000 an acre. That's not uncommon. The effective property tax rate, and this is huge, can get below 0.3% of the property value. And if it's interesting to you, short-term rental and off-grid investor activity is rising in counties near recreation and timber assets. So the further you get outside of those major metros, the more opportunity you're going to have for an STR business or maybe even an off-grid investment. And the biggest thing is the people that have been looking for short-term opportunities, looking for owner finance opportunities, Arkansas started attracting those investors back in about 2022. And you're not going to hear it on major podcasts because, it's Arkansas, but the locals there know, and the investors that got in there early, they're already cash flowing big. And to wrap it up on Arkansas, look, it doesn't have the investor cachet like Florida or Tennessee. Man, people have been talking about them for area, and those markets are tight right now. But the key to a great investment, and again, we're talking for the next 10 years, is finding these opportunities before they become household names with investors. Before we move on to number 2, I want to remind you, if you're looking to buy in another state, especially an investment opportunity, and you're not quite sure where to start, make sure you've got that local resource on hand to help you through that stuff, whether it's a realtor, contractor, engineer, lender. Any of those local resources are going to be key to help you figure out what to buy and make a good purchase. If you don't have those people in whatever state you're looking in, reach out to me. I know realtors, lenders, and contractors all throughout the United States. I could take care of you with that. All right, number 2 on our list is Florida, but if you're looking for growth with value, you're not necessarily looking along the coast and things like that. We're talking about inland and up in the panhandle. And you already know that Florida's growing, but the right part of Florida is the investor's dream. And that's why, relative to the state's demand curve, where people are looking, those inland areas and the panhandle, that's where the huge opportunities are. And in terms of data to back it up, over 1,000 new residents daily moved to Florida in 2023 and 2024, and they're still moving there in 2025. Rural land in Holmes County, Jackson, Calhoun County, it's still averaging about $15,000 to $20,000 an acre. And the really interesting thing for investors is that the USDA is reporting about a 13.4% year-over-year increase in Florida farmland values. That's a huge increase in farmland value. What's really nice is in these rural areas, Florida's property taxes are going to average somewhere about 0.75%. And there's also a $50,000 homestead exemption that adjusts with inflation that's going to lower your property tax burden there if you have a home. The strategy right now for Florida is not buying on the beach. We're talking about buying where builders are going to be 5 years from now. Again, we're talking about a 10-year plan. We want to look out. We want to look at what's happening with development and get out in front of it just enough so that in 5 or 6 years, those builders are coming in. And what you're looking for is where's that new infrastructure going in? There's a lot of this happening around Gainesville, Polk County, and again, throughout the Panhandle, there's a ton of new infrastructure coming in. So that's really what you're looking for, just to get out in front of what that current development's doing. Another thing about Florida, though, is that its tax plan really favors long-term residents. So if buying this land is a part of your exit plan to get out of wherever you are, the homestead benefits and no state income tax are massive leverage opportunities for you. Okay, and before I get to number one, I'm going to let you know after this isn't just the end. I've got three other states, or actually two other states and a part of a state that really could be worth considering outside of these top three if you don't like any of these options. So make sure you stick around to hear those other options as well. All right, and the number one state for the next 10 years, and this is just an all-around balanced option, is Tennessee. Tennessee is just this really interesting combination of being tax friendly, growth ready, a lot of infrastructures in there, and very, very light regulation on that front. Property taxes are really, really low. There's no state income tax, and a lot of the rural areas are actively expanding and actively trying to bring people in, and they're wanting that expansion in Tennessee right now. So, for example, with our data right now, Trousdale County had 146.7% turnover in 2024. That means more properties sold than new listings were being created. Supplies can't keep up with that, and that's going to cause prices there to continue to go up. And not quite as high as 146.7, but Coffee County, Anderson County, and Warren County all came in over 138% turnover. And the real beauty here, Tennessee's average property taxes are about $1,200. That's about half of the national average. So Tennessee is a really, really tax-friendly state. And another one, just to put in the back of your mind, Rutherford County, which is near Nashville, added 26,000 people in 3 years. It's on track to become Tennessee's third largest county by 2050. That's what I'm talking about when I'm saying we're trying to get in front of that development over that next 10 years. But you've got to pay attention because it's not all green lights. All right, we mentioned Coffee County. One of the reasons that it was expanding was because of their mayor. Well, their mayor passed, and right after he passed, the new council stopped all subdivisions and upped minimum zoning to 5-acre lots. That's how fast things can change. So you've got to do your due diligence. So if you're going to buy in Tennessee, make sure you're moving quickly, make sure you've got your financing lined up, and try to stay as rural as possible so you can avoid some of those nightmare situations where they just shut things down. Now, there's a lot of situations where these other properties have been grandfathered in and they can't go back and change that, but if you're under contract when that policy shift takes place, you're going to be screwed. All right, so now let's talk about the three states that didn't quite make the list, but I also want to talk about a framework that you can use to evaluate these states for yourself. The first one's Missouri, right there north of Arkansas, especially that Ozark region that it shares with Arkansas. There's a lot of unrestricted land, and one of the great things about Missouri is they have really, really good homesteading protections. The second one of these is Alabama. There's a huge tech boom that's going on just outside Huntsville right now, and many of those counties in Alabama are still unrestricted. So again, you can get in, make changes, make your development happen, and make that money in the next 10 years. The other one, it's not a whole state, it's just northern Arizona that I'm talking about right here. And what's happening in northern Arizona has a lot to do with solar power. In addition to the solar operations that's going on up there, the land's really, really cheap. But if you need water, you have to check your water availability. Water rights are really, really hard to come by in Arizona, especially that northern part. Now let's talk about that framework to help evaluate these things. First of all, what are the taxes like on a yearly basis in actuality? Again, make sure you've got somebody local that you can talk to with this. If it's in Texas, I can help you with that. If you need it in another state, reach out. I can probably help you with that too. I know a lot of people, but you have to understand those carrying costs up front. Again, if this is a 10-year play, you need to know, are the property taxes pretty static? Are they going to change? Are they going to change not much? Are they going to escalate a lot? You need to know that up front if you're making a long-term play. The second is there a homestead exemption or some other type of exemption that you can get and lock those property taxes in at a lower rate? A lot of times you have to have an actual home there. You have to live there. But again, like in Texas, and there's other states that do this too, if you're a vet with different degrees of disability, that also can lower that tax burden. So understand up front what that state's tax burden looks like, but also what are the possibilities that you can lower that burden based on a specific exemption. Another thing, and this is kind of state to state, make sure you're understanding what the state laws are on easements and wells and access, utility being provided, things like that. Make sure you understand that up front before you jump in. And then when you're analyzing properties, look, has the zoning changed recently, or is there planned zoning amendments that you need to be aware of? Again, those local resources are absolutely critical when it comes to stuff like this. And then if you've watched enough of my videos, you understand Always, always, always get a brand new survey. Always check for deed access. And if you're buying rural land, if yours is unrestricted, the one next to you is unrestricted also. So you need to make sure that your neighbors are going to be on board with what you're trying to do, both in a good way and a bad way. You could put in a Taj Mahal, and if they put in a giant shooting range with people running around and driving side by sides 7 days a week, 15 hours a day, your Taj Mahal is not going to be worth much. And just a reminder, land purchases are a long game. So if you're thinking in terms of decades and not trends, remember, these are the three that we're looking at right now as the best opportunities. Tennessee is going to give you liquidity, low tax drag, and high turnover. Florida is going to reward you in terms of a long-term strategy and tax shelter playbooks. And then Arkansas is going to be that deep value sleeper that has a lot of room to run up those prices in the future.